Captain Aria Carter stood at the center of the council's vast chamber, her presence as still and unmoving as the silent room around her. The great leaders of the galaxy, creatures of ancient power and wisdom, watched her every move with keen, scrutinizing eyes. The heavy atmosphere in the room pulsed with uncertainty, and the air seemed thicker with every passing second. She had pressed the button on her device, and the strange sound, the eerie hum, had filled the chamber, echoing off the walls. Then the message appeared on the holographic display. "We have arrived." The message was simple, almost cryptic, but the council knew better than to underestimate it. The human envoy, young and untested, had made a statement, and it was far from ordinary. Now, as the silence of the chamber stretched on, the weight of Aria's words seemed to hang in the air like a storm cloud ready to burst. "What is the meaning of this?" The voice came from a hulking figure at the far end of the room, a creature made of jagged metallic armor. Its tone was thick with suspicion. "You've come here under the banner of peace, yet your actions say otherwise. What do you truly want?" Aria Carter's face remained composed. She had trained for moments like this, moments where the words would be twisted, misinterpreted, where the fate of an entire species could hang on the edge of a sentence. But she had no intention of letting the council derail her message. Humanity was no longer a small, insignificant race trying to fit in. They were something much more. Her fingers gently hovered over the device at her side. Another line of text flickered onto the screen, bold and defiant. "This is not a greeting. It is a declaration." A cold silence swept through the room. The alien leaders exchanged quick, uneasy glances. The air was suddenly thick with tension. This was not the diplomatic approach they had expected. The humans were playing by their own rules. No one had warned them of this. There was no protocol for a species like humanity, one that had barely begun to grasp the vastness of the galaxy, but was already claiming its place in it. "What are you declaring?" The reptilian leader, whose scales shimmered with age, finally asked. His voice was slow and deliberate, but his eyes flickered with a trace of fear. Aria leaned forward, her voice calm but piercing. "We are declaring that the time for asking is over. Humanity is not here to beg for a seat at the table anymore. We are here to claim our place. The galaxy is no longer in the hands of the old powers. The balance has shifted." The leaders shifted uncomfortably in their seats, some murmuring to one another. These were beings who had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. The idea of humanity, a race so young, suddenly declaring their place in the stars was something none of them could comprehend. The Council had always held the power, always controlled the flow of the galaxy. The thought that this fragile race from Earth could challenge that was too much to bear. "I must protest," came a voice from the back. A member of the Eldri, an ancient species known for their wisdom and their neutrality in galactic affairs. "This is madness. You speak of power, but what power do you truly have? What do you really know of the galaxy, of the forces that move it? You are nothing but children." Aria's eyes never wavered. Her hand rested lightly on the table, but the intensity of her gaze cut through the Eldri's words like a blade. "You're right about one thing. We are children, but children can grow. And we've been learning faster than you could ever imagine. You speak of power as if it's something handed down over time. But we've discovered something you've overlooked. The human race is built on survival, on overcoming impossible odds. You think we've come here to make peace, to bow to your will. No, we've come to make our mark." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle into the room. There was no turning back now. Her fingers tapped lightly on the device at her side, and the next message appeared on the display. "Humanity's true power is in its will. You will not stop us." A collective shiver passed through the room. The idea that the humans had some unknown power was unsettling, but the real fear wasn't just in the power they might have. It was in the idea that humanity might not be afraid to use it. The Council had never encountered a race that wasn't afraid of war, of the destruction it could bring. Humanity, though, humanity seemed ready to embrace it if necessary. The reptilian leader snarled, his claws digging into the armrests of his seat. You dare challenge us. You dare challenge the balance we've created over millennia. The galaxy will never bow to your will. It is not in the star's design. Arya smiled, but it was not a smile of comfort. It was a smile that suggested she knew something the others didn't. The galaxy's design. What makes you think you control the stars? The truth is, no one controls the stars. We've learned that. The Council, your systems, they're all based on an old model, a model that's failing. You control the flow of information, the treaties, the alliances, but you cannot control humanity. As she spoke, her words seemed to echo, the room growing darker, more foreboding. The council members exchanged looks, unsure of how to respond. What Arya was saying wasn't just a threat. It was a warning. Humanity had unlocked something new, something unknown, and that terrified them all. We've been building something, Arya continued, her voice gaining strength. Not just weapons, but a new way to see the universe. You've had your chance to lead. Now it's our turn. And if you try to stand in our way, there will be consequences. The elderly member, shaking his head, muttered, You can't possibly understand what you're getting yourself into. The forces at play here, the cosmic order, it's beyond your reach. Arya's expression softened, but only slightly. Maybe we don't understand everything yet, but we will. That's what makes us dangerous. We learn, we adapt, and we survive. The galaxy hasn't seen anything like humanity, and it's about to. A heavy silence filled the room once more. The leaders sat in stunned disbelief. They had been expecting a simple meeting, a formality to bring humanity into the fold of galactic civilization. What they got was a message, a warning of something far more complex and far more dangerous than they could have imagined. The holographic display flickered again, and this time there were no words. Instead, a series of images flashed across the screen. Massive ships, advanced weaponry, human soldiers fighting with relentless determination. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for dominance. One of the council members, the leader of the vast and warlike Drexari, spoke with venom in his voice. You are no different than any other species that has sought to rise above its station. You are nothing but a threat, and we will respond accordingly. Arya stood up, her hands pressed firmly on the table. Then let the galaxy respond. But know this, we will not back down. This is our future, and we will fight for it. The council chamber was silent. The message had been delivered, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The council chamber was buzzing with confusion and fear after Arya Carter's chilling declaration. The leaders of the galaxy, species who had once believed they controlled the destiny of the stars, were now in a state of panic. The words, "We have arrived, and this is not a greeting. It is a declaration," echoed through their minds, and the entire room seemed to tremble under the weight of it. Captain Arya Carter sat motionless at the center of the chamber, her eyes focused, not on the stunned faces around her, but on the path that lay ahead. She knew what she had done. Her message was clear, and the moment she had pressed that button, humanity's fate had shifted forever. The old powers of the galaxy had been warned, but the truth was far darker than anyone in the council realized. Explain yourself, Captain Carter. The voice of Jairus, the mighty reptilian leader, was filled with frustration and disbelief. His massive form, scaled and imposing, seemed to swell as he leaned forward in his seat, his cold eyes locked on Arya. You dare declare war against the galaxy? Jairus growled, his voice echoing through the chamber. Your species has not even earned the right to speak here. Arya's gaze didn't falter. Her hands rested calmly on the table in front of her, her fingers steepled together, as though she were simply waiting for the storm to pass. She knew the council would react this way. The truth, however, was that their fear only made them more dangerous. But this was part of her plan. She needed them to understand that humanity wasn't going to be pushed around anymore. "We aren't declaring war," Arya said, her voice steady. "We're declaring our place in the galaxy." The council fell silent for a moment. The words hung in the air, heavy and final. There was a sense of confusion, but also a growing unease. Jarrus, his tail flicking nervously, turned to his fellow leaders, seeking confirmation, but none came. No one knew what to make of it. "You speak of a place in the galaxy," said Galdrus, the leader of the Saurians, his eyes narrowing. "But you have no understanding of what you're dealing with. The galaxy's balance has been established for millennia. And you." He gestured toward Arya with a clawed hand. "You are nothing but a speck of dust compared to what lies in the stars." Arya did not flinch. "That may be true," she said softly. "But it is precisely because we're a speck that we have the power to shake the galaxy. You underestimate humanity. You think we're young, weak, and insignificant. But you are wrong." A ripple of uncertainty passed through the council as Arya's words began to sink in. They knew she was right about one thing. Humanity had a unique quality. They had survived against impossible odds on their own planet. But what the council didn't know was that humanity had something else, something they had never revealed, something that gave them an advantage no one could anticipate. Jarrus's voice snapped through the air again. "What are you hiding? You claim you found power, but show us. Show us what you have, or this meeting is over. We will not waste any more time on your empty threats." Arya's expression remained calm. "I won't show you. Not yet." She paused for a moment, letting the tension grow in the room. "But I will tell you. We've discovered something that will change everything. The galaxy's power isn't in its weapons or its alliances. It's in understanding the stars themselves. And we figured it out. We found the key." The council members exchanged nervous glances. They had assumed that humanity's sudden rise to power was a fluke, a product of desperation or luck. But now, with Arya's words hanging in the air, they began to understand that humanity's power was real, and that they might have unlocked something the galaxy had overlooked. "Explain yourself," Galdrus demanded, his voice growing sharper. "What key are you talking about? We've studied the stars for centuries. What could a young race like humanity possibly know that we do not?" Arya's lips curled into a faint smile. "The key is not a weapon. It's knowledge. It's a truth that no one else has discovered. And that's why you fear us. You fear what we will become. You fear that humanity will rise up and take what you've had for so long: control over the galaxy." A long silence followed. The council members sat back in their seats, each lost in thought, grappling with the weight of Arya's words. No one spoke. It wasn't until Jarrus let out a deep, rumbling growl that anyone broke the silence. "Enough of this nonsense," he said, his voice thick with rage. "You speak of knowledge, but you are nothing but a child playing with forces you cannot comprehend. We've lived for millennia. What could your species possibly bring that could stand against us?" Arya's eyes narrowed, and for the first time, a flicker of something dangerous passed across her face. "You don't understand. Humanity is not like the rest of the galaxy. We were born out of conflict. We've learned how to fight, but we've also learned how to survive. We don't bend. We don't break. And now we're ready to show you just how far we can go." Jarrus leaned forward, his sharp teeth showing. "Then show us. If you think you're ready to challenge the council, then prove it. But know this: if you fail, it will be your undoing." Arya stood slowly, her movements deliberate. "I don't need to prove anything to you," she said, her voice colder now. "You'll see for yourselves soon enough." With that, she turned and walked toward the exit of the chamber. The leaders of the galaxy watched her leave, each of them haunted by the same thought. What if humanity was not bluffing? The silence in the room was deafening. The council had never been more uncertain. Arya Carter's words had planted a seed of doubt that could not be erased. They had hoped humanity was just a passing storm, a brief flicker in the galaxy's long history. But now, They weren't so sure. As Arya stepped out of the chamber, she couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. The message had been delivered. The Council would never forget her words. And soon, the galaxy would know what humanity was truly capable of. The game had begun. The moment Arya Carter left the Council chamber, she felt the weight of the galaxy pressing down on her shoulders. She had sent the message, but now the real work would begin. The Council had seen her as nothing more than an envoy, a messenger with a bold declaration. What they didn't know was that humanity had spent years preparing for this moment, and what they had unlocked was beyond their wildest imaginations. Back in the shadows of Earth's secret space command, the truth was beginning to unfold. Arya wasn't the only one who knew what was at stake. There were those behind the scenes who had worked tirelessly, hidden from the rest of the galaxy, to uncover a power that would make the Council tremble. They weren't just building weapons. They were tapping into something ancient, something far older than any of the Council's most powerful races could understand. Aboard the flagship Odyssey, Admiral Lena Shaw and her team watched the latest data stream in from Earth's hidden research facilities. The transmission was encrypted, but they had been prepared for the day the galaxy would challenge humanity. Now they had to be ready to fight back. Lena sat at the command console, her face pale as she stared at the new readings. "This can't be right," she muttered under her breath. Her fingers danced across the control panel, running the calculations again. But the results didn't change. A quiet voice from behind her broke the silence. "Is it true, Admiral? Have we really unlocked it?" Lena turned to face Dr. Marcus Rowe, one of humanity's brightest scientists. His face was lined with years of work, but now there was a flicker of fear in his eyes. He, too, had known what was at stake. "Yes, Marcus. It's real. We found the source." The source wasn't just technology or science. It was something much deeper, something connected to the very fabric of space and time itself. Humanity had stumbled upon an ancient relic buried deep beneath the Earth, a technology that predated even the oldest civilizations known to the galaxy. This was not something the Council, or any other species, had ever encountered before. "We've been studying it for years," Lena continued. "It's an energy source unlike anything we've seen, capable of warping space itself. If we can harness it, we can change the rules of this game." Dr. Rose swallowed, his hands shaking slightly. "And if we can't control it?" Lena looked him in the eye. "Then we won't survive." Back in the Council chambers, the leaders were already discussing what had just happened. The reptilian Jairus paced back and forth, his tail twitching with agitation. He couldn't believe what he had just witnessed. Arya Carter's declaration wasn't just empty words. It was a challenge. But there was more to it. There had to be more. "The humans are hiding something," Jairus growled, his voice low and dangerous. "They're not telling us the truth. We've known for years that Earth's technology was primitive, nothing that could possibly threaten us. But now they've made a move we can't ignore. We need to find out what they've discovered," said Galdrus, the Saurian leader. His voice was sharp, cutting through the tension in the room. "We need to understand what power they've unlocked. If they have something that can challenge the Council, then we need to act before it's too late." The Council fell into a grim silence. They had always controlled the galaxy through power, fear, and careful manipulation. No one, not even the most advanced civilizations, had dared to rise up and challenge them. Until now. Humanity had stepped into the arena, and they didn't even know the full extent of the threat they were facing. Back on Earth, the Odyssey was preparing for the worst. Lena Shaw stared out into the stars, knowing that the galaxy was about to change forever. The Odyssey wasn't just a ship. It was humanity's most advanced vessel, built not just to defend Earth, but to give them the ability to strike wherever they needed to. But even with all their preparation, the unknown still loomed large. "We're not ready," Dr. Rowe said quietly, breaking the silence. "The energy source, it's unstable. We're still testing its limits. If we try to use it now, we could lose everything." Lena's face tightened. She knew the stakes. But the Council wouldn't wait. They would come for humanity soon, and when they did, they would bring everything they had. Earth couldn't afford to wait any longer. "Then we make it work," Lena said firmly. "Whatever it takes. We can't back down now." Back at the Council chamber, the leaders were deep in their own discussions. Jarvis slammed his fist onto the table, his anger bubbling to the surface. "We need to send a message. We cannot allow this human uprising to go unchecked." "You're right," said Galdris, his voice low. "We've allowed too many species to rise up over the years, but humanity is different. They are the first to defy us so openly. The time for negotiation is over. We must show them that they are nothing but a small speck in a galaxy that belongs to the Council." The Drexari leader, a hulking figure whose presence could send shivers down anyone's spine, nodded. "We'll send a fleet. A show of strength. It will crush their resistance before it even begins." And so, the decision was made. The Council would send a fleet to Earth, a force capable of annihilating everything in its path, capable of stopping humanity's rise before it could fully begin. But what the Council didn't know was that humanity had already anticipated this move. In secret, under the watchful eyes of Lena Shaw and the team working behind the scenes, Earth had begun to harness the true potential of the ancient technology. The fleet the Council was sending would find itself up against something it had never seen before. Aria Carter stood in her command center, staring at the vast expanse of space before her. She had already sent the message to the galaxy. She had already made her declaration. But this was the next step. The Council would come, and they would bring war with them. But humanity had something they could never expect: the will to fight, and the power to back it up. The galaxy would soon know that humanity had stepped into the fold, not as a subservient species, but as an equal and possibly a future ruler. The fight for dominance had begun. The Odyssey sat in the vast emptiness of space, a solitary sentinel among the stars. Aboard the flagship, Commander Lena Shaw stared out into the black void, her mind racing. Earth was no longer just a small planet hidden in the galaxy. It was now the focus of every power in the galaxy. The Council had made their move. The fleet was already on its way. The small group of human leaders and scientists who knew the full extent of humanity's potential had gathered in the briefing room. There was a heavy weight in the air, a sense of unease. They had sent the message, but now it was time to prove their worth. The galaxy's most powerful races were coming to Earth, and they weren't coming for peace. Lena turned to Dr. Marcus Rowe, who stood at the front of the room, his expression grim. "How much time do we have?" she asked, her voice steady despite the storm brewing in her chest. Rowe tapped on his console, bringing up the coordinates of the incoming fleet. "They're only a few days out. We've got a small window to prepare." "Small window?" Lena's eyes narrowed. "We've been preparing for years, Marcus. We have to be ready." The doctor nodded, but there was a look of doubt in his eyes. "You know as well as I do, Lena. What we have, what we've uncovered, is dangerous. The energy source, the relic, it's unstable. We're only scratching the surface of its power." Lena took a deep breath, her thoughts racing. She had been part of the plan from the beginning. Humanity had always been a species on the edge, struggling to survive in a galaxy that didn't want them there. But now, with the power of the relic at their disposal, they had a chance to not just survive, but to dominate. "We don't have the luxury of time to figure it out," she said firmly. "The Council won't hesitate. They'll attack first, and we won't be able to stop them if we're not ready." In the distance, the stars seemed to burn even brighter, as though in response to the gathering storm. Humanity had already sent out its defenses, but they knew they couldn't stand alone against the full force of the Council. The Odyssey was powerful, yes, but it was only one ship. One ship wasn't enough. "Lena," Dr. Rowe continued, his voice tinged with urgency, "we've only tested the energy source in small doses. If we try to use it all at once, we could lose everything. The fabric of space itself could tear apart. "We don't know what will happen." "We don't have a choice," she said. "They've made their move. And now, so must we." The ship's communications officer, Lieutenant Teravos, turned to Lena with a concerned look. "Commander, I'm receiving a message from Earth's High Command. They say the Council fleet is now within range. They're already organizing defenses around the planet." Lena's jaw tightened. "Good. Let them think they're ready. We'll show them what true power looks like." Meanwhile, far across the galaxy, in the heart of the Council's military fleet, Jairus, the reptilian leader, stood before a massive holographic display. The fleet was massive, its sheer size an intimidating sight. Hundreds of ships, battleships, and dreadnoughts, each one capable of laying waste to entire planets. But even as he looked at the display, something gnawed at him. Something in the back of his mind told him that this wouldn't be as easy as they had first thought. "Are we ready to move?" Jairus asked, his voice cold and commanding. "Yes, my lord," a voice responded from the bridge. "The fleet is in position, and we're awaiting your orders." Jairus narrowed his eyes. "The humans are not like the other species we faced. They are more resourceful than they seem. We have underestimated them once before. We will not make that mistake again." He turned toward the holographic map of Earth's defenses, which flickered with activity. The planet was bracing for the attack. But Jairus knew that no matter how many ships they sent, no matter how much firepower they brought, there was one factor they hadn't accounted for: the unknown factor of humanity itself. "They're hiding something," Jairus muttered. "What are they truly capable of?" Geldris, the Saurian leader, stepped forward, his sharp gaze piercing. "We'll find out soon enough. Earth will fall. But we need to prepare for the worst. If they have found something we don't know about, we'll deal with it when the time comes." Jairus interrupted. His claws tapped against the metal of the command console. "But we are not going to hesitate. We will strike quickly and decisively." Across the stars, Area Carter, the human envoy who had ignited this conflict, stood in the command center of the Odyssey, watching the stars outside. The Council was coming, and humanity's future was now in their hands. "You've done your part, Area," Lena said as she entered the room. "Now it's time for the rest of us to carry this through." Area didn't turn around immediately, but her voice was clear and unwavering. "They won't stop until they destroy us. We've made our stand. Now we must hold it." Lena studied the young woman who had started this whole chain of events. The Council had underestimated humanity at every turn. They had assumed that Area's bold declaration was a bluff, a move from a species too inexperienced to fully understand the galaxy's power structure. But in truth, Area had known something they didn't. Humanity had the will to fight, and they had discovered something the galaxy's ancient powers had overlooked. "We're ready," Lena said. "We'll fight, no matter what it takes. For Earth, for our future." As the two women shared a brief, solemn look, the communication officer's voice crackled over the intercom. "Commander, we have a fleet of Council ships entering Earth's orbit. They're preparing to make their move." Lena's eyes flashed with determination. "It's time." The Odyssey's engines roared to life as it broke free from its position in space and began moving toward Earth. Behind it, a small fleet of human ships, less numerous, less powerful, but no less determined, followed in formation. The Council was on its way to Earth. They were confident in their victory. They believed humanity was nothing more than a brief distraction. But they were wrong. The storm was coming, and humanity would show the galaxy that they had a strength no one had ever expected. The stars outside the Odyssey shimmered like pinpricks of light against the vast expanse of the void. The ship's engines hummed steadily, propelling it forward as it drew closer to Earth's orbit. Commander Lena Shaw stood at the front of the command deck, her eyes focused on the battle ahead. Behind her, the crew was tense, preparing for the fight of their lives. Humanity had never faced a threat like this before, but they were no longer the helpless species they had once been. They had discovered something ancient, something powerful, and they had chosen to fight. "Commander," said Lieutenant Tara Voss, her voice breaking the silence, "the Council fleet has entered Earth's orbit. They're preparing to deploy their full assault force." Lena's jaw clenched. She had known this day would come, but knowing didn't make it any easier. Humanity had sent its message. Now, the Council was responding with everything they had. "We've sent our message," Lena said, her voice steady but filled with determination. "Now it's time to show them who we really are." On the ground below, Earth's defenders had already mobilized. Cities were on high alert, and the defenses around the planet were activated. Anti-spacecraft weapons, powerful orbital defense satellites, and hidden military bases all waited for the inevitable assault. But none of it was enough. Humanity needed more. At the heart of the Odyssey, Aria Carter stood in front of a control panel, her fingers poised above the ancient relic they had recovered. The energy it contained was both a blessing and a curse. They had learned to harness it, but they still didn't fully understand its potential. If it worked, it could tip the balance of power. If it failed, there was no telling what the consequences would be. "Aria," Lena said, stepping into the room, her voice filled with urgency. "Is it ready?" Aria didn't look up from the panel. "I don't know. But we don't have a choice. If we don't activate it now, we'll lose everything." Lena hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Do it." Aria pressed the button. The Odyssey shuddered as the energy began to surge through its systems. The entire ship groaned under the strain, and a brilliant light filled the room. For a brief moment, everything seemed to pause, as though the universe itself was holding its breath. Then the energy flared to life. Outside, the fleet of Council ships entered Earth's atmosphere, their massive forms blotting out the stars. They were here. "We have visual confirmation of the enemy fleet," Tara reported. "They're moving into position." Lena stood tall, her voice calm but commanding. "All ships, form up. We fight for Earth. We fight for humanity." The Odyssey broke through the outer defense line first, its engines blazing with the newly activated energy. Behind it, human ships, smaller and less advanced than the Council's, followed in formation. They weren't fighters. They were survivors. And that survival instinct was now their greatest weapon. The Council ships, massive and overwhelming, began to unleash a barrage of firepower, their weapons tearing into the human defenses. But what they didn't expect was the raw energy of the relic, now coursing through the Odyssey and its fleet. The energy created a protective shield around the human ships, rendering most of the Council's attacks ineffective. "Commander, we've engaged the enemy," Tara called out, her voice tinged with both fear and awe. "The energy source, it's working. Our shields are holding." Lena allowed herself a brief smile. It's just the beginning. As the battle raged above Earth, Aria stood at the heart of the conflict, knowing that the fate of humanity rested on a fragile edge. The Odyssey's new weapon wasn't just a shield. It was a beacon, a sign of humanity's defiance. The Council had underestimated them, and now they were paying the price. But even with the relic's power, the Council was relentless. They unleashed their most powerful weapon, a massive dreadnought, capable of turning entire fleets to dust with its energy cannons. It moved toward Earth, its destructive power unmatched. Lena's eyes narrowed as she watched the dreadnought approach. "We can't let it reach the planet." She turned to Aria, who had already anticipated the move. "We'll take it down," Aria said, her voice unwavering. "With the energy we've unlocked, we can do it." The Odyssey surged forward, its engines roaring as it headed straight toward the dreadnought. The human fleet followed, their ships moving with coordinated precision. Aria's fingers danced across the control panel, adjusting the relic's power. The energy around the Odyssey intensified, crackling with raw potential. As the dreadnought fired its first volley, the ship's shields absorbed the blast. No damage. Lena's heart raced as she barked commands to her crew. "Prepare to fire all weapons. Now." With a deafening roar, the Odyssey unleashed a massive energy wave directly at the Council dreadnought. The beam shot across space, a blinding line of pure power, and collided with the dreadnought's hull. The massive ship shuddered and groaned as the energy poured into it, its shields crumbling under the pressure. The dreadnought exploded in a burst of light, its massive form disintegrating in an instant. The Council's fleet fell into chaos as their flagship was destroyed. The remaining ships, rattled and unsure, began to retreat. The unexpected force of humanity's power had shattered their confidence, and now they were scattering, unable to cope with what they were up against. Lena's voice came over the comms, steady and resolute. "This is humanity's moment. Do not let them escape." The human ships pushed forward, cutting through the Council's retreating forces, until the enemy fleet was scattered across the stars. As the battle subsided, the Odyssey stood alone amidst the wreckage, its crew silent in the aftermath. Earth was safe, for now. The threat had been vanquished, but the message had been sent. Arya stood beside Lena on the command deck, watching as the Council's fleet retreated, the victory settling in. "They'll never forget what happened here," she said softly. "And neither will we." Lena nodded. "Humanity has taken its place in the galaxy. We've shown them what we're capable of." But as the battle ended, there was one thing both women knew. This was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, and there were still those who would seek to challenge humanity's newfound power. The Council had been defeated, but other threats would rise. But for now, humanity had proven one thing: they would never be ruled again. The war for Earth was over, but the war for the galaxy, that had just begun.